When this number gets bigger, the aperture closes. If you look here, if I close my aperture, it's closing this iris mechanism, this metal blades that makes a smaller hole, and then opening up is the opposite direction. So if you look here, I'm at 1.5 wide open. If I'm here at 22, which is where I just set this camera to, I've closed my iris, so now I have this little hole. So what that does is it lets less light in, but it's letting less light in, but it's also giving me more depth of field. So right in front of the camera, all the way out to the curtain in the background is in focus. Now if I go the opposite direction, I'm scrolling the scroll wheel, the most open I can get with this lens is a 5.0. And it's not really super shallow. Like if I put my hand in here and it's autofocusing on my hand, you'll see the background go out of focus. And then it'll refocus on the foreground. Let's go the opposite direction again and see if we can do that same test. So if I put my hand in the foreground, you see that my hand in the foreground is in focus and the stuff in the background is in focus. So everything from touching the camera, I'm basically touching the lens right now, all the way out to that blue curtain, or even like if there was nothing and there was like mountains and sky in the background, everything would be in focus. So that's aperture. When you're at a high F number, everything's in focus. When you're at a low F number, only certain things along this, it's called z-axis, like math class. So like x-axis is left and right, y-axis is up and down, z-axis is in and out. So everything from like the foreground to the background now, you have control that you're forcing your audience to look at the hand, and then the blurriness in the background is kind of similar to what our eye does with lenses and physics. It's called depth of field. The artistic decision as a photographer or a videographer, in my opinion, is 9 times out of 10, I'm thinking about the aperture, so what's depth of field wise in focus so that other things are not. So that I'm really focusing my audience's attention on the thing I want them to look at, and everything else goes blurry. See if I can get my hand in focus there. I touch on the screen, there we go. Yeah, so now my hand's in focus and everything else is blurry. Using that strategy as a photographer or videographer, you can do some very creative and artistic things, and the softness of the quality of the depth of field changes with the lens. So maybe I can grab some different lenses and show you some different things out here now. Okay, so we have a couple of lenses that we can use. So you have your kit lens that's inside the case. You have this 24-70 Canon L glass lens, and these are really nice lenses with great autofocus. And then we have this Rokinon Cine lens. So this is a fully manual lens, no autofocus. You have to spin this manual focus ring in the front in order to set focus. You also have an aperture ring in here where you can open or close the aperture. So a wide open aperture, so these are all set to the most open aperture setting, will give you shallow depth of field. So what does that look like? So if we look at this shot here, in focus is this light box, and in the background it's kind of still in focus but slightly out of focus. Now if we look at this one here, we have our focus set to the light box in the foreground, but the background is way more blurry. So that's called shallow depth of field, like a shallow end of the pool. There's only a little bit of focus along the z-axis. It's shallow. Whereas if you want it to be deep, you would have to stop down your aperture. So that's why I usually shoot in aperture priority mode. So if I'm at f22, now look, everything's in focus. If I scroll the opposite direction, now the background starts to go out of focus, and my foreground's the only thing that's in focus. So you're forcing your audience's attention to exactly what you want them to look at. And you use the focus, so you could touch on the screen to set where you want focus, or you can use the focus ring on the lens to set focus. And then here's the shallowest. So if you look how shallow the background is here versus here, and as you closer focus, so if I put my hand closer to camera and I rack the focus close, and as I put my hand in focus and the background is very, very soft, you see this bokeh in the background, the lights turn into these big globby looking cool things. That's what that's what you probably want to go for. The most shallow depth of field every once in a while looks pretty cool. It looks very cinematic, artistic. And then I'm going to set my focus as close to the camera as I can. And then see how shallow the background is there. Now that is like super soft. That's as shallow as it'll get. This is at a T stop or an F stop, a 1.5, so it's very, very, very open, and you get this super shallow, very movie-making, cinematic kind of quality of focus. And then we're going to close this all the way down, and everything, again, now we're back in focus. So I can show you what I'm doing. Pull this guy off. If you look on the side here, we have these numbers. It's a T stop that's a little different than an F stop, but you know, we don't really need to know the exact reasons. But F22 or T22 is closing down the iris. We get everything in focus. T1.5, we get this, you know, very soft, super cool looking, shallow depth of field. So if you're making a movie, you want to use these Rokinon lenses. So you want to use these manual lenses. By the way, you can't put the manual lenses on anything directly to the R8. You can't put the manual lens directly to the R8. You have to use this adapter that's in the middle. So there's an adapter here that you see. There's an adapter here that you see because this is not an R lens. And then there's no adapter here. So let me see. You can't, like, you can kind of see on the back too, this black thing is the adapter. So we only have two currently. So silver cases, there's one here and one here, should have the adapter, and you can put whatever lens you want on it. And then black cases do not, they just have the kit lens. And then in my office, turn the light on, we have all the different manual lenses. So you can see on the back of each of the lenses how many millimeters it is. These are all prime lenses. They don't zoom. There's one zoom lens in here, but everything else is like fixed. So you have to like move your body in order to get the shot. You can't like zoom in or zoom out with the lens. You have to actually move the camera closer or further away. So that's going to do it for this. A little bit about shallow depth of field and which camera rig to use. I would recommend using the silver cases with an adapter with the 24-70 if you're running gun. And we noticed we had the wireless audio box on top. You can be fully wireless and doing like Man on the Street where you have a handheld mic and interviewing people, and autofocus is awesome. And then if you were doing like more cinematic stuff, you want it to look more pro or kind of artistic, you probably want to start getting your hands on the Rokinon lenses and shooting some manual stuff where you have to set manual focus. And there's tips for manual focus that I'll go over in a different video.